There's a moment that happens in every interaction with a woman that most men completely miss. It's not when you make her laugh. It's not when you compliment her. It's not even when you finally touch her arm or lean in close. It's earlier than all of that. It's the moment when her body makes a decision her mind hasn't caught up to yet, when her breathing changes slightly, when she angles herself toward you without realizing it, when time seems to slow down just enough that the air between you feels different, heavier, charged. Most men never create this moment because they're too busy trying to get somewhere. They're focused on the destination, the kiss, the number, the outcome, and they miss the entire journey that actually builds desire. Because here's what nobody tells you. Attraction isn't created through advancement. It's created through atmosphere. And atmosphere is built in the invisible spaces between words, in the energy you bring before anything physical ever happens, in the way a woman's nervous system responds to you when you're doing absolutely nothing. This is why some men can sit across from a woman at a coffee shop and create more sexual tension than others create in an entire night of escalation. It's not about what they do, it's about what they generate. And once you understand how to generate that field, how to create that atmosphere where desire grows on its own, you stop working so hard and start allowing attraction to do what it naturally wants to do. Expand. Let me tell you about the biggest lie you've been sold about attraction. You've been told it's a ladder, that there are steps, that you climb from conversation to rapport to connection, to touch, to intimacy. That if you follow the right sequence, she'll respond predictably. This belief has destroyed more potential connections than any rejection ever could. Because attraction isn't linear. It doesn't move in straight lines. It doesn't wait for you to complete level 1 before unlocking level 2. Attraction is a climate. It's weather patterns. It builds in unpredictable ways based on temperature, pressure, and the right conditions colliding at the right moment. You can't force weather. You can't schedule lightning. But you can create the conditions where storms form naturally. Think about the last time you saw a woman completely captivated by a man who wasn't doing anything obvious. He wasn't performing, he wasn't entertaining, he wasn't even trying that hard. Yet she couldn't look away. Her body was oriented toward him even when she was talking to someone else. She found excuses to stay near him. She laughed differently at things he said. What was happening there? Was he exceptionally attractive? Maybe, maybe not. Was he saying brilliant things? Probably not. So what created that magnetic pull? The answer is simpler and more profound than you think. He was comfortable in empty space. He didn't need the interaction to go anywhere. He wasn't filling silence with nervous energy. He wasn't performing for validation. And that absence of need created a vacuum that her attention rushed in to fill. This is the first principle that changes everything. Women are attracted to men who don't need them to be attracted. Not in a cold way, not in a dismissive way, but in a grounded way that says, I'm completely fine if this moment ends right now, and I'm equally fine if it continues. That emotional neutrality is paradoxically intoxicating, because it's so rare. Most men leak desperation in microdoses throughout every interaction. They agree too quickly, they laugh too eagerly, they watch her face for approval signals, they shift their energy to match her mood. And all of that effort, all of that emotional labor sends one message underneath the surface. I need you to validate me so I can feel secure. That message kills attraction before it can even form. Because desire doesn't grow in certainty. It grows in question marks. So if touch isn't the answer, and trying harder isn't the answer, what actually creates that moment when her body decides you're different? It starts with something most men have trained themselves out of: stillness. We live in a culture that worships action. Do more, say more, be more, show her you're interested. Make your intentions clear. Don't waste her time. All of that advice has a hidden cost. It turns men into performers who are constantly auditioning for a role they already have. Because the truth is, the moment she agreed to be in your presence, you already passed the first filter. She's already decided you're worth some of her time. What happens next isn't about convincing her of anything. It's about not unconvincing her. Most men ruin attraction through addition. They add compliments she didn't ask for. They add jokes to fill silence. They add questions to keep things moving. They add plans to prove they're serious. Every addition is a subtle form of pressure, and pressure is exactly what collapses the possibility of desire. Here's what works instead. Subtraction. Remove urgency, remove agenda, remove the need to be impressive. What's left when you strip all of that away? Just you, present, grounded, unhurried, and that version of you is infinitely more attractive than the performing version because it gives her nervous system permission to relax. When she relaxes, her defense is lower. When her defense is lower, she becomes receptive, and receptivity is where attraction plants its first seed. Let me give you a specific example. You're talking with a woman, the conversation is flowing. Then there's a pause. Most men panic here. They feel responsible for filling it. They reach for another question, another topic, another piece of content to keep things alive. But what if you did nothing? What if you simply stayed present in that pause, maintained relaxed eye contact, and let the silence breathe? Something fascinating happens in that space. She becomes aware of herself, aware of you, aware of the moment. That awareness is uncomfortable at first, but discomfort isn't bad. Discomfort is where chemistry lives. When two people can be uncomfortable together without rushing to resolve it, they're sharing something intimate. They're saying, I don't need to fix this feeling. I can just be here with you in it. And that unspoken agreement creates a bond faster than any conversation could. This is why stillness is powerful, because stillness forces realness. When you're not doing anything, she can't evaluate your technique. She can only feel your energy. And if your energy is calm, steady, and unapologetic, her body recognizes it as strength, not the aggressive kind, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. But stillness alone isn't enough, because if you're just sitting there like a statue, you're not creating anything. You're just there. The missing piece is focus, directed attention that makes her feel like the only thing that exists in your world right now, not because you're trying to make her feel special, but because you're genuinely curious about who she actually is beneath the surface she shows everyone else. Most men look at women the way they look at art in a museum. They notice the obvious, the frame, the colours, the immediate impression, but they don't study the brushstrokes. They don't wonder about what the artist was feeling when they created that particular shade of blue in the corner. They don't ask themselves what story is hiding in the negative space. When you look at a woman with that level of curiosity, not as an object to acquire, but as a mystery to understand, something shifts in how she experiences you. Because most people in her life want something from her. They want it to be fun. They want it to be easy. They want her to fulfill a role, but you're not asking her to be anything. You're just noticing, actually seeing her. This kind of attention is magnetic because it's rare. When was the last time someone looked at you and saw past your social performance? When was the last time someone asked you a question because they genuinely wanted to understand your answer, not because they were waiting for their turn to talk? That feeling of being truly seen is so powerful that it creates instant connection. And connection is the foundation attraction builds itself on. Here's how this looks in practice. She mentioned she works in marketing. Most men respond with, "Oh, cool, what kind of marketing?" Generic question, generic interest. Instead, you notice something in how she said it. Maybe there was hesitation. Maybe there was pride, Maybe there was exhaustion, and you respond to that. You said that like there's a story behind it. Simple observation, no pressure to share. But if there is a story, you just opened a door most people walk past. And if there isn't, she'll respect that you are paying attention at a deeper level. This is the difference between mechanical conversation and psychological connection. Mechanical conversation follows scripts. Psychological connection follows curiosity. And women feel the difference immediately. When you're genuinely interested in understanding her, not impressing her, she drops her guard. Because for once, she doesn't have to perform either. But here's where most men make their second critical mistake. They take this connection and immediately try to convert it into something physical. They feel the warmth and think, great, now I can escalate. And in doing so, they break the spell. Because they reveal that all of that attention, all of that curiosity, was just a strategy to get to the real goal. And once she realizes that, the trust evaporates. This is the paradox of attraction. The moment you try to cash in, you lose your equity. The moment you reveal you are working toward an outcome, the outcome becomes less likely. Because women don't want to be destinations. They want to be experiences. They want to feel like the moment itself is valuable, not just a stepping stone to something else. So what do you do instead? You appreciate the connection for what it is. You let it exist without needing it to become anything more. You trust that if the attraction is real, it will evolve on its own timeline. And in that trust, in that patience, you demonstrate something most men never show. Self-control. Self-control is the ultimate aphrodisiac because it's the ultimate display of confidence. A man who can feel attraction and not immediately act on it is a man who has options, a man who has patience, a man who understands that the best things unfold rather than being forced. And that kind of man is rare enough to be irresistible. This brings us to the element most men completely misunderstand: tension. They think tension is something you create through flirting or teasing or push-pull dynamics. But real tension isn't manufactured. Real tension is the natural byproduct of restrained desire. It's what happens when two people feel something but neither of them rushes to resolve it. It's the space between what is and what could be. And that space is where attraction intensifies. Think about your favourite movie. The best scenes aren't the ones where everything happens. They're the ones where you know something is about to happen. The pause before the kiss, the moment before the revelation, the silence before the storm. Your nervous system is activated not by the event, but by the anticipation of the event. The same principle applies to attraction. When you create space between yourself and the outcome, when you allow moments to stretch without rushing to fill them, you're generating anticipation. Her mind starts working. She starts wondering, is he interested? Is he not? Does he feel this too? Why isn't he making a move? And in that uncertainty, desire grows. Because her brain is now actively engaged in figuring you out, and the act of figuring someone out creates emotional investment. But tension without direction becomes anxiety. So you need to give her just enough to stay curious without giving her so much that the mystery collapses. This is where calibration matters. You maintain eye contact a beat longer than normal, but not so long it becomes uncomfortable. You stand close enough that she can feel your presence, but not so close that you're invading her space. You touch her briefly, casually, a hand on her back as you guide her through a door, and then you remove it before she can decide how she feels about it. These micro-moments create micro-tensions, and micro-tensions accumulate into macro-attraction. Because each one is a small question mark her nervous system has to process, and the more questions her nervous system is processing, the more activated she becomes. Not in an anxious way, in an alive way, in a way that makes being around you feel more vivid than being around anyone else. This is why the men who create the strongest attraction often seem like they're barely trying. They're not doing more. They're doing less, but with more precision. They understand that attraction is built in moments, not in grand gestures. A glance held, a smile that appears and disappears, a comment that reveals you notice something everyone else missed. Here's a specific scenario. You're walking with her. The sidewalk narrows. You place your hand lightly on her lower back to guide her in front of you. The touch lasts 2 seconds. Then it's gone. You didn't announce it. You didn't ask permission. You didn't call attention to it. But she felt it. And more importantly, she felt your comfort with it. Your ease with physical proximity. Your lack of hesitation. That micro moment just communicated confidence louder than any words could. Or another scenario. She says something clever. Most men would laugh and compliment her. That's funny. You're quick. Generic validation. Instead, you just smile. Not a polite smile. A genuine smile that reaches your eyes. A smile that says, I see what you did there, and I appreciate it. Then you hold her gaze for 1 second longer than she expected. Then you look away and continue whatever you were doing. In that moment, you just created 3 things. You validated her without words. You created a moment of shared acknowledgement, and you moved on before it became predictable. That sequence is more powerful than any compliment because it's mysterious. She can't quite name what just happened, but she knows she liked it. This is the art of implication. You don't declare your interest, you imply it. You don't state your attraction, you suggest it. And suggestion is always more powerful than statement because it requires her to fill in the blanks. When she fills in the blanks, she's participating in the creation of attraction rather than just receiving it. And participation creates ownership. When she feels like she's partly responsible for the chemistry between you, she becomes invested in it. But none of this works if you're not genuinely present. If you're following techniques in your head while she's talking, she'll feel it. If you're calculating your next move while pretending to listen, she'll sense the disconnection. This is why inner work matters more than outer technique. You can't fake presence. You can't manufacture authenticity. If you're not actually comfortable with yourself, if you're not actually okay with silence, if you're not actually curious about her, the techniques will feel hollow. So before you try to create attraction in someone else, you need to create it in yourself. You need to become the kind of man who is genuinely comfortable in his own skin, who doesn't need external validation to feel secure, who has developed himself enough that he has real substance beneath the surface. Because women don't just respond to what you do, they respond to who you are. And who you are shows up in every micro-expression, every tonal shift, every moment of hesitation or confidence. This is why men who focus on themselves, who build their lives, develop their skills, cultivate their interests, naturally become more attractive. Not because they're trying to attract women, but because they've become men worth being attracted to. They have stories worth hearing, perspectives worth exploring, presence worth experiencing, and that substance is what makes all the other elements work. Without substance, you're just performing techniques. With substance, every interaction becomes an opportunity for genuine connection, and genuine connection is what women actually crave. Not games, not tricks, not manipulation. Just a man who is real enough to let her be real too. So here's the framework that brings it all together. You start with stillness. You remove urgency and agenda. You become comfortable with empty space. That stillness creates safety. Once she feels safe, you introduce focus. You pay attention at a level most people don't. You notice what she reveals. Between the lines, that focus creates connection. Once connection exists, you add tension. You allow moments to stretch. You imply rather than declare. You create space for anticipation. That tension transforms connection into attraction. And through it all, you maintain self-control. You don't rush. You don't force. You don't need immediate outcomes. You trust the process. Because you understand that attraction isn't something you do to someone. It's something you create the conditions for. And when the conditions are right, it happens on its own. This is how you turn a woman on without ever touching her. You become someone whose presence alone is activating. Someone who creates an atmosphere where her nervous system comes alive. Someone who demonstrates through stillness, focus, tension, and self-control that you are rare. And rarity is what creates value. Most men will never understand this because it requires patience they don't have and comfort with themselves they haven't developed. They'll keep chasing outcomes, keep trying harder, keep wondering why effort doesn't equal results. But you're different now. You understand that attraction isn't earned through work. It's generated through being, through becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to try because his presence speaks louder than any effort ever could. If this changed how you see attraction, subscribe for more insights that go against everything you've been taught, but align with what actually works. And comment below with one situation where you felt attraction without understanding why. Let's decode what actually happened. The men who master this don't touch more. They touch less but mean it more. They don't talk more. They talk less but say more. They don't do more. They do less but with more intention. And in that restraint, in that precision, they create what every woman is actually looking for. A man who doesn't need her but chooses her. And choice, when it comes from a place of genuine abundance, is the most intoxicating thing there is.